All right, we are back. We got a return interview. This guy was kind enough to come on the show when we were at a very young stage last year, and did an awesome interview. Had some awesome answers to some at least decent questions, and we are thrilled to have Mitchell Renz representing Chat Sports back on the show. Now, I want to say first, this is the earliest personally that I've ever recorded a show. Mitch, you look fresh and ready to go. Like you look like possibly you've been up for a couple hours already. Is that accurate?
It's not accurate. I actually rolled out of bed maybe like 30 minutes ago. But if there's one thing I've learned from working at my time at Chat Sports, Sundays and football are early days. So during the season, we get into the office at like 6 a.m. and we don't get out of there until like midnight. But that's just part of football. That's part of the biz. And it's Sunday, and I would much rather be talking football than, I don't know, really anything else, I guess, on a Sunday.
Fair enough.
Absolutely.
Fair warning to both of you. I have two small children, and at 8 a.m. on Sunday, kind of all bets are off. So if you hear screaming, crying, excessive laughter, anything like that coming from offset, I apologize, but there's probably not much I can do about it. Mitch, we also learned when you were on the show last time that you're a competitive eater of sorts. What's the grossest thing you've ever competitive eaten?
Grossest thing I've ever competitive eating? Probably, I'll just say blueberry pie. And I'll say that because it was my senior year in college, right before we all went out drinking and stuff. And I ran student activities at my school, Centenary College, shout out. And yeah, ate about like 4 blueberry pies, and then going out and trying to have beer is not the best decision.
Did that ruin blueberry pie for you, like forever?
Oh no, I can still crush blueberry pie. Absolutely crush it. There's a lot of things that I don't know. You guys know I can eat a lot of food. So
well, I do now. I didn't when I met you, but yeah, okay. Anyway, Mitchell Renz, the multi-talented Mitchell Renz.
I appreciate that. Yeah, if you guys want to see the other food that I eat, I guess you can follow me on Twitter, MitchellRenz365, or Instagram. I always post a lot of stuff right now with Chat Sports on Instagram. We get all this like free food, and we have kegs and stuff on tap. So that's pretty cool to have. That's pretty cool to have at work. But nah, for sure, I'm a writer at Fantasy Pros though also, and I'm a writer at Gridiron Experts. This is going to be up on YouTube, so if you guys want to check out my shirt, check out fantasyfootballtshirts.com. It's a good place to grab some fantasy football swag.
All right, let's get right down into it. We don't know how long the lull, the silence in my house is going to last, so we're gonna plunge right into the interview. All right, starting off, what we feel was by far the biggest fantasy value turnaround of free agency. Jerick McKinnon, the Wolves boy, became the next Shanahan workhorse off the tail end of a fat 4-year, $30 million contract. The Wolf is extremely high on him, like I said, ranking him at number 12 overall and as the 9th running back on the board, 35 spots higher than the other experts right now, according to the ECR. Are we insane? And I like how this question is phrased. We talk about the Wolf has him at 12, but the question is, are we insane? He wants to pull me into his madness. Is the Wolf insane? What are your feelings on Jerick McKinnon?
So I think Jerick McKinnon right now is the most polarizing running back in the NFL just because of the total turnaround. I mean, when you pay a guy 4 years, $30 million, it's the 4th highest salary among running backs in the league, behind only guys like LaShawn McCoy, Le'Veon Bell, and Devonta Freeman. What I think is the most interesting thing about McKinnon is his role, right? So, like, I don't want to say never a believer in McKinnon because I know he's a spark athlete. Like, he may have the greatest NFL combine for a running back in NFL history. Like, go look at it. More reps than a guy like Saquon Barkley, the same 40 time, like, just absolutely just blew up the combine. So he's a freak of an athlete. But he's coming off of a season with only 3.8 yards per carry, which is, I think scary for a lot of people. But I wrote an article at Fantasy Pros called NFL Blind Comparisons, and I compared Jerick McKinnon to a past running back that Shanahan's had. It's Devonta Freeman. The year before Freeman got Shanahan, he averaged 3.8 yards per carry. He's the exact height and weight of a guy like Jerick McKinnon. And then in that very next year, Devonta Freeman was the number 1 running back in fantasy football. Just absolutely blew it up. So then I was like, okay, maybe Shanahan knows what works in his system. So then I went back and I looked, and there was another running back, the exact same height, the exact same weight of Devonta Freeman and Jerick McKinnon. His name is Steve Slayton, and that was also Shanahan's first year in Houston Texans in 2008. What happened? Over 1,600 yards again and over 10 touchdowns. So now I'm saying there, I'm hyping up all this McKinnon hype, and I think what the 49ers are doing is interesting. However, at running back 9, as deep as the running back class is for me, he's still a guy who I don't know if he cracks my top 15, but he is no doubt a guy in my mind in a PPR league. I could be looking at it next year and being like, wow, why didn't I have McKinnon in my top 5?
Wolf, rebuttal.
And so I think everything you cut up there was perfect. The hand-picked Shanahan glove-like fit for the scheme. You know, you cited the 3.8 yards per carry, but even Shanahan himself came out and said, you know, people are saying he's not a featured back. He averaged low totals. But when we cut up the clips of what we wanted to see, what we do with our running backs, what we how they fit into what exactly we like to do, that zone blocking scheme, so historically productive. You cited those guys. I mean, Alfred Morris, even though a different build, like he just finds guys that fit, even if they're late, even if they, you know, didn't have big names beforehand. He finds guys that fit. So he cut up the clips that he wanted to see of McKinnon, and that includes, you know, using him on pass routes. He called him an issue for teams in the passing game. Cut up, you know, the zone open vision field type of the things that go into that zone blocking scheme. I mean, he said McKinnon fit in those runs more perfect than anybody he saw in free agency and really in the draft. And obviously the money backs what he says, backs his words. When you throw, like you said, the 4th highest paid money at a running back like that, he clearly loves McKinnon. I think it's going to be a workhorse role. I think he's going to be used tons in the passing game. Like you said, PPR leagues, I'm predicting 50, 60 catches at least for McKinnon with about 1,400 total yards, 10 TDs. Devonta, I mean, like you said, blind comparison, Devonta Freeman. I think it's going to be exactly like we saw it there. The only thing I'm worried about is, do they have the line to execute? I love Jimmy G. I love the surrounding talent there. I think that offense is on the rise. Do they have the right linemen to pull off this scheme and give him the space to operate? I'm not sure. But everything he said about McKinney, I got lost in the film watching him. All these, you know, hype puff porn pieces you hear from Shanahan just have me extremely excited, because anytime he's picked a back and said, that's my guy, it's always been productive. That's a bet I hammer every single time in fantasy.
Mitch, you like LaShawn McCoy or Jerick McKinnon first in your draft?
I'll take McCoy. I'll still take McCoy.
I have McKinnon significantly higher.
I know.
You're a McCoy guy. I know.
I think you're low on McCoy. I don't know. Like, I mean, I said you have to be anticipating an injury to have him as low as you do, and that's what you're going in on. And that seems like an odd thing to just kind of bank on.
Well, I don't know about that.
That whole offense sucking. I think they have legitimately no talent around him, no quarterback, no receivers. I mean, did you see his tweet yesterday? He was like, "Please sign Des Bryant. ... Please." Like, it was literally desperate. It was
I mean, yeah, that's fair.
A cry for help.
And I would not want anything to do with Des, but maybe if I were Buffalo, I would. I don't know.
The line too. Think about the line there. Like they've lost Incognito. They traded Corey Glenn. They've got nobody on the line. You got Chris Ivory potentially vulturing goal line looks. I just hate everything about that setup when you stir in the injury risk. Like, it's not just injury, Nat. I hate all his setup right now outside of the talent himself. I love Shady. I think he's an incredible back, obviously. But everything else around him is grading out low on that fantasy stock formula. So I hate him, and I think everything else around McKinnon grades out extremely high, other than risk, because he's never done it before. He's never been a featured back before. So he grades out low in risk, but everything else I look at from him is fantastic. So it's kind of opposites if we're using our formula.
Okay, so Mitch, given all that the Wolf just said, why are you higher on McCoy than McKinnon, or did he just convince you right now?
I'm just going to look at past success. I mean, we can't really sit here and say that the Buffalo Bills were all that good last year. Like,
playoff team.
But were they really that good?
You like Tyrod, though. I mean,
no,
Tyrod,
I do like Tyrod.
Right.
Yeah, and but at the same time, I know what McCoy can do, and sure, he suffers like 6 or 7 like season-ending injuries, like what seems like every year. Like he just goes down. We're like, oh, he's done, and then he's right back out.
He misses like a quarter.
I just think he's going to get so much work. He's just going to get so much work. And the other thing that scares me with McKinnon is I've went back and go back and look at Jimmy Garoppolo and his use of running backs. So last season, Carlos Hyde, 59 receptions, and I was the guy who was like, oh, Carlos Hyde is kind of a one-dimensional back in that offense. With Jimmy Garoppolo, Hyde had only 10 receptions. So maybe he wasn't checking it down. Like maybe, sure, like the offense is different and McKinnon is much different running back, but go back and look at it even with Breida. He just didn't check down a lot. And that's one thing, like, it's kind of I love McKinnon. Like, please go read my NFL blind comparison article. Like, it's amazing. Like, to see how much better of an athlete Jerick McKinnon is than a guy like Steve Slayton or than a guy like Freeman. This is probably Shanahan's best running back like he's ever had from a talent spark standpoint. There's still so many unknown commodities, and when you just go and look at how deep the running backs are this year, I'm going to take somebody who I know has done it over a guy who I hope can do it.
Yeah,
right.
it's very fair. I've always been a ceiling chaser, and I think McKinnon's ceiling. I mean, he legitimately could be the top 3 running back this year, and I'm always a ceiling chaser. There is a bottom barrel floor because, like you said, yeah, he hasn't done it. There is a huge floor, but I'm always going to chase that ceiling. I love it.
And it's one of those things for me. Like, do I want McKinnon on my team? Yes, but because of this hype right here, there's going to be a guy, and I guarantee every single draft who's just going to take him higher than me, and that's okay. Like, that's part of it.
I know you're talking to that guy right now. He's sitting next to you on my Skype screen.
I can tell.
Moving on to question number 2, Allen Robinson, arguably the biggest free agent wide receiver name, and he landed in Chicago, where they have stacked up a barren weapons cabinet, formerly barren, we should say, also adding Trey Burton and Taylor Gabriel. What are your thoughts on this new look Bears passing game and the value of its pieces? Seems weird even asking that question, but what do you think, Mitch?
I'll say from a real life standpoint, I think what the Bears did this offseason is really solid. I was a huge Allen Robinson fan coming out of Penn State. He's one of those guys who I got the privilege to watch live when I used to live in Central PA, and he's just a big physical receiver, and I think he is truly talented. I mean, you don't just throw up 14 touchdowns in a year with Blake Bortles and be mediocre, right? Like, now he's going to Mitchell Trubisky in his sophomore season. We saw a guy like Carson Wentz take a big step in his sophomore year. I don't know if that's going to happen. I like Nagy as the new OC. I like Hefferich, the guy from Oregon. I think they're doing the right things. And I think they're going to build a real-life, solid football team and offense because I think the Bears have one of the most underrated offensive lines in the league. I think they have one of the most underrated defenses in the league. But I don't know how much of a fantasy football production standpoint that's going to lead to Allen Robinson. I don't know how much they're going to throw. Like, they still have 2 solid backs in Tariq Cohen and Jordan Howard. They're going to pound the ball. And I'm a huge fan of Trey Burton. He's a top 12 tight end for me, and I think he is a truly special tight end. But Allen Robinson going to the Bears, it's sometimes we see a wide receiver, especially with the young quarterback, struggle in that first year. So I don't know how much stock I'm going to have on Allen Robinson, and I don't know if he's even a top 20 wide receiver for me.
Wolf?
I think you brought up 2 huge names, and that's Nagy and Helfrich. And Nagy's already come out and said this is going to be a very vertical offense. We're going to attack downfield. We're going to be aggressive. We're going to push that ball. Obviously, signing Taylor Gabriel really plays into that vertical-based offense. And you look at Mitch Trubisky, under conservative John Fox, barely threw it deep. But when he did throw it deep, he had the 3rd-ranked passer rating on balls over 20-plus yards, which kind of matched up perfectly with Robinson, even though he's only a 4.6 40. Led the NFL that year you cited where he had 1,400 yards and 14 TDs, led the league with 19 catches and 672 yards on passes of 20-plus yards. So he can get deep. He's got that alpha target hog, and I'm looking at an alpha target hog with what I hope is an ascending quarterback. That's the one issue I have is can Trubisky actually get it done? PFF grading says, maybe he can. He did last year when he was used properly, and I really think Nagy and Helfrich are going to use him properly. Nat, we talked to Charles Fisher from Fish Duck, and he was raving about Helfrich as a QB developer. The reason, Marcus Mariota cites him for everything and says this was the guy that made me who I am today. So I really believe in Helfrich. I believe in Nagy. I think they're going to be an aggressive scheme. They've got the weapons to do it. And I think Robinson's going to be the focal point of that passing attack. So I'm all in on the Bears in general. You cited those backs. I love both of them. I think Howard with his unbelievable vision, but Tariq Cohen is so explosive too. I think this offense is just going to take a huge step. I like them real life too. The defense is great. I think they're going to really make a name for themselves. And I think Robinson's going to be the focal part of the passing attack, hauling about 80 or so balls, 1,200 yards, and 6 to 8 TDs as a true alpha hog. And I think people who obviously there's the injury risk. He was a dud the last year before that too. So there is some serious risk there. But I think he's built to be an alpha. I think he's going to be used like an alpha. And I think this offense as a whole takes that step and makes it worthwhile volume as well.
Yeah, I don't know. This is one of those things, if you follow basketball at all, but I mean, the Philadelphia 76ers have been just abysmal for years and years and years. And, you did find a handful of people every year that said, "Oh, this is going to be different. This is going to be the year."
Yeah.
And I had to see it before I would believe it. And they are pretty good this year, and it took them many years. And that's kind of the camp I'm in on the Bears. I mean, I will have to see it until I believe it. They just have been so lousy for so long. And I see the weapons. I see what you're talking about. I just don't know. I could see it being an utter and total disaster. I could also see some of these guys blowing up and having relevant fantasy or real world seasons. So I know that's major riding the fence, but that's kind of the camp I'm in on the Bears.
Of course.
Right
and that's kind of the whole thing with even McKinnon. It's like, see it before you believe it. A lot of people take that fantasy stance, and it's not a bad stance. Those are the people that like the floor. They want a sturdy base to their fantasy team, and I respect that. It's more so that you miss out on the value that's with the unknown. McKinnon will go late round 2 because we haven't seen it, but could perform as an early top 5 pick because of it. Allen Robinson, same thing. There's a lot of unknown with the Bears. He'll be priced as a mid-range wide receiver too, probably 4th, 5th round, but could be a top 10 guy. So the unknown creates value, and I like to pounce on that value. It also creates huge we swing and miss on plenty of guys too, but that's how you got to go after the unknown sometimes. Nat.
I hear you.
I think they're a good example of like the Bears in general this year, and like the way I said this on a podcast earlier. I mean, I think John Fox was last year's Jeff Fisher, and I think that this Bears team could be what we saw with the Rams. Well, no, but
exactly.
It's like
no, you're not wrong. I agree with
John Fox is a very, very vanilla coach, and so is Jeff Fisher. And it's reasons why they don't have jobs. And I think when you look at a guy like Jared Goff, like we were like, what's wrong with Jared Goff? Is he broken? And then we could say the same thing about Trubisky. I mean, I didn't know if I was a true believer of Trubisky coming out of North Carolina with really only like 1 year of experience, but started to actually like show like, okay, like you actually give me some time and you let me do my thing, like he can be pretty good. And that's one part of me where I'm like, am I going to look at this Bears team at the end of the last year and be like, we saw it with the Rams. Why didn't I jump on it earlier? But it's one of those. It's tough though.
That's a totally fair point. Totally fair comparison. I like the John Fox, Jeff Fisher comparison, and you're right. Those guys do not have jobs, and I would be surprised to see them get jobs again.
I hope to God.
Question. I mean, I'll get some job. I'm sure like a restaurant would hire him or something to be. But anyway, Sammy Watkins. Talking about swings and misses. There's some potential swings and misses here. Sammy Watkins joined an already explosive cast in Kansas City, giving Patrick Mahomes the ultimate toy cabinet in contrast to the barren weapons cabinet we just described on question number 2. The Wolf couldn't be higher on Mahomes, slotting him at number 92 overall, 38 spots. Count them, 38. That's over 3 full rounds above the ECR, while ranking him ahead of guys like, you might have heard of these fellas, Drew Brees, Ben Roethlisberger, Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck, who, has perennially injured, so I don't really consider that a big deal, among many others. What are your thoughts on Pat Mahomes? And we have a disclaimer warning here that Tyreek Hill may be brought up in the course of this question-answer session. So, Mitch, what do you think?
I already knew the Tyreek Hill thing would be coming up, and that's a no-doubter. But so the Patrick Mahomes hype is we've only gotten one game from him, and it was against a good Broncos team on the road, and I thought he played okay. Last season, though, it's one of those. It's really hard to. So for me, when I look at numbers, okay, so like I'm going to look at Alex Smith, and I'm going to say Alex Smith has been a dud basically 11 years of his career, and then in his 12th year, career high passing yards. First time he's ever thrown for over 4,000 passing yards, and I believe was the leader in passer rating with 104. So in the NFL, so I'm like, okay, Alex Smith, maybe he took a leap forward. He was also, I believe, the number 1 quarterback with yards over 15 yards or more in the NFL last year.
Yep,
Alex Smith. But I don't really believe that's what Alex Smith is. I believe it was the Chiefs' offense, and I believe it's Andy Reid and just the entire team is Tyler Whole, I guess. Mahomes, though, at 9, I'm not going to take him over a guy like Drew Brees. I will not take him over a guy who I believe is the greatest fantasy quarterback of all time. You want to just talk about just numbers putting up. Like, I understand what the Saints did last year, but even if you can get me back to maybe a little bit more of a norm for Drew Brees, there's no reason why I don't think he could throw for 4,400 yards and like 28 touchdowns. Like, I don't think that's too much of a stretch. However, the Patrick Mahomes hype, I think, is going to continue to grow because the guy has an unbelievable arm. I think he has the highest ceiling out of all the quarterbacks that came out last year, and I'll still stick by that, and I said that. he may have the best arm in the NFL, and that's going to be fun to watch. And when you combine that with guys like Watkins and Hill, and then Kelsey and Hunt, like this team is loaded. But to have him in my top 10 QBs, I'll pass on that.
Wolf, I mean, that's the fighting words, like given like how you are with Pat Mahomes these days. He's in your entourage, right? Like you guys chill and stuff.
I absolutely love Mahomes. At top 10, I think he's got top 3 upside. He's got like a Deshaun Watson type of impact potentially in him, which I know sounds blasphemous, but I think he could be a true fantasy game changer. You mentioned the surrounding cast. Nobody averaged more yards of separation than the Chiefs receivers last year. I think Tyreek Hill's a huge part of that, and I think that's why you cited, Alex Smith was pretty mediocre his entire career up until last year. Well, he had the weapons to finally really flourish with Andy Reid's system. They could finally take that kind of conservative West Coast offense a little more vertical. I think Nagy was a big part of that, and I think losing Nagy is my only real question mark if this offense is going to continue to be as vertical. But as you mentioned, Mahomes' arm is just so strong. Then you add in Sammy Watkins, who, for all his inconsistencies, all his faults, can still separate as well as anybody, can still track deep balls as well as anybody. So you got Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins on one side, you got Travis Kelce terrorizing the seams down deep, all with a cannon arm. The guy at the center of it, Pat Mahomes. It's just going to be, I think, a complete juggernaut that can't be stopped. Never mind Kareem Hunt underneath in the backfield. I mean, it's just too many weapons. So even if I didn't believe in Mahomes as a talent, and I do, I think just like you said, the highest QB ceiling of that class. I love the talent. So then when you put him in this scheme that gave Alex Smith the number 2 QB finish of last year with even better talent, I don't see how anything other than a top 10 campaign is going to happen. I think Breeze is the only one on that list that I think is questionable because the floor is so high. He had 22 touchdowns last year, but had 30 touchdowns for 10 straight years before that, 30 or more. So, I mean, the floor is higher with Breeze. I would love to have like Breeze and Mahomes, or even, Mahomes, which would, who wouldn't? Like, yeah, great problem to have. Breeze is just going to go in rounds 5 or 6, which is where he belongs because of his floor. I never take a quarterback that early. I love to wait till 10, 11, 12 and kind of take a Mahomes Rivers combination. Could be a weekly just absolute nightmare for real NFL defenses. We saw him. You cited that game against the Broncos, a solid Broncos defense. His top target was Albert Wilson that game, and he still was lighting up a good defense. Led a comeback win, was throwing the ball in the tight windows because none of his receivers could get open. You give him those weapons we were just talking about, I think it's going to be a fantasy just fireworks all over every Kansas City game. And I'm diehard on him, especially again Tyreek. You give Tyreek Hill some time to separate even deeper, because he's got some mobility in the pocket. Mahomes does. You had some rushing upside, buy time for those guys to streak down the field and rope it. It's just going to be big play after big play. That Will Fuller, like Deshaun Watson type combination, we're going to be seeing that in Kansas City week in and week out, and it's going to be fantasy gold.
I have a couple quick comments to wrap this section up. First of all, did Drew Brees really only throw 22 touchdowns last year?
23. Yeah, it was I think
23. That's nuts. I had no idea. However, I also think it's nuts to put Pat Mahomes above Drew Brees. I absolutely would put Mahomes over Andrew Luck. Roethlisberger, that's tough. I mean, you got Le'Veon Bell, you got Antonio Brown. You never know. But yeah, I mean, I think it's nuts to put him above Brees. Although I agree, Brees probably going to go a little earlier than you want to take him. I will say, Mitch, I would, as a Broncos fan, I would take a little bit of exception to you saying that they played a good Broncos team, and Pat Mahomes is one team. That team,
a decent defense.
I mean, in theory, like that was a defense in name, and man, yeah. I mean, people were just no fly zone. They were such garbage. But anyway, that's not a big deal. I just felt like I had to jump in and kick the Broncos while they were down on principle. All right, let's move on to
look at Mahomes. Like Jimmy Garoppolo's going above him.
I would take Mahomes over Garoppolo. Garoppolo seems like more of a real life quarterback almost.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Garoppolo's real life quarterback might be the best one to have right now. He showed some seriously testicles to close out last year, the way he came back in games. But in terms of fantasy, the situation of Mahomes is just so much juicier.
Yeah,
There's so many of these guys going well above him. It's insane to me.
I agree with you on that. All right, let's move on to something kind of fun. The Browns. You don't hear that much. The Browns. That's something fun. Shockingly relevant in real life and in fantasy. This could be a total facade. Let's be honest. After finally cashing in on all their assets, Tyrod Taylor, Jarvis Landry, now join Josh Gordon, a stacked line, and other freakish athletes, and Corey Coleman, David Njoku, might have pronounced it wrong, but you guys all know who I'm talking about, to form a barrel keg. A barrel keg? Is that a powder keg or a barrel keg? I've got barrel keg, but I think the term's powder keg. Anyway, again, you know what we're talking about. Something that could blow up. It has explosive potential. How do you see this unfolding? I can't wait to hear the answers to this.
All right. So this is, I think what they did this offseason, and it's fun because the Browns hype is back a little bit. Sure, like,
oh yeah.
I'm not a huge believer. I'll start it off right now. I'm not a huge believer in Hugh Jackson. I mean, when you have one win in the last 2 years, it's kind of hard to be. And that Browns team last year was not an 0-16 team. I encourage you to go back and look at the Detroit Lions. Like, that team gave up over 500 points. Like, that was an awful defense. So I think the Browns could have at least been like a 3-win team. And now they've added some guys, interesting pieces. Like, I like Carlos Hyde. I think if there's going to be one guy on this entire Browns team who I touch, it's either going to be Carlos Hyde or it's going to be Tyrod Taylor. And because all the other options, I have absolutely no idea. Like, zero idea. Like, Tyrod Taylor, the most passing yards he's ever had in a season, 3,100. The most receiving yards a receiver's ever had with him is Sammy Watkins at 1,000. Most receptions is 60. And for the fact that Josh Gordon and Landry are both top 20 receivers, that's hard for me to put a peg on. But you saw how much Tyrod Taylor leaned on a guy like Charles Clay. So Njoku, I really like as a talent, could steal some targets. And then when you throw in the equation Duke Johnson as a running back who's probably going to have 60 receptions, good luck. Good luck figuring out who the heck's going to get points in this offense because I have no idea.
Do you think they're going to put up the points, though? Do you think it's going to be a tidal wave of offense, or are they going to still be – I mean, they were abysmal the last 2 years. Obviously, they're going up, but how up do you see them going?
Well, when you throw 28 interceptions and you have just the quarterback issues that they had last year, I don't really think – I mean, they have to improve. Like, there's God, I mean, I would hope they don't throw 29 interceptions, or I can't even imagine that. But
Tyrod Taylor, he's so careful with the ball, though. I think that's a great point to bring up. I mean, I don't think he's ever had double-digit interceptions. It's shocking. I didn't realize how careful he is with the ball. It blew my mind when I saw the stats.
Well, that's why he got benched for a guy who threw 6 picks, Peterman. Like,
right, it's disgusting.
It was amazing that day at work. Oh my Lord! But I that's the thing. Like, Tyrod's going to get his 400 yards rushing. Tyrod's been, I believe, QB 14 and QB 11 the last 2 years on a pretty bad Bills team, which I think we've already gone over. But now he's going to go to a Browns team that has a lot of options, and there's no reason why you couldn't tell me like Tyrod's not going to finish as a top 12 QB because he's done it literally like the last 2 or 3 years.
I think we're kind of an island on ourselves for this one, Mitch. I love Tyrod, too, and I keep seeing hate after hate after hate in the Twitter world for fantasy on Tyrod. I think the biggest concern people keep bringing up is he could get benched for this stalwart, whatever quarterback they draft. At number one, yeah, sure, that's a risk, but I like Tyrod. I don't think he's going to get benched. I think he's going to get the full season at least so they can develop this guy behind him, whoever it ends up being. And I just believe in Tyrod as a talent in general. He's not going to turn the ball over. He's going to get his rushing, like you said. And this is by far the most explosive cast he's ever had to throw to. I think he throws a nice deep ball. You look at Josh Gordon, nobody can get deep and over the top of defense as good as Josh Gordon when his head's on straight. Of course, that's a huge if. That's a guy I'm surprised. You said you'd only touch Taylor and Hyde. Josh Gordon, to me, drips in so much upside. I absolutely love him. I'm going to try to be getting him on almost every team because Todd Haley, we've seen, obviously it's easy when you have an Antonio Brown or a Larry Fitzgerald, but he did it with Dwayne Bowe. I mean, Dwayne Bowe had 15 touchdowns under Todd Haley. He loves to pepper his number one guys, and assuming Josh Gordon emerges as that number one guy, the talent should dictate that. He's going to be one of the most talented guys that Todd Haley's ever had to work with. And this is by far the best quarterback that Josh Gordon's had at his disposal. I mean, he put up 1,600 yards in 14 games with who? Brian Hoyer and friggin' Brandon Weeden and just complete garbage. You're telling me with Tyrod Taylor he can't do something similar? So I'm really high on Gordon. I think that's a guy you got to give a little more love to.
I mean, you like Taylor. I like Taylor fine. I think you're higher on him than I am. But I thought Mitch's point about like what is the most receptions anyone's ever had with Taylor is like 60. You got 2 guys in, and it's like everyone's all of a sudden expecting like 200 reception guys out of Taylor. And I just that seems
look who he's working with. A
nuts to me. And was he also going to throw like 60, 70 passes to Duke Johnson? Like what 80 to Njoku or something? That's not Tyrod's game. seems unlikely. Plus, I think that they're probably going to draft Sam Darnold, and I don't see Tyrod playing the season. I think you're wrong. It's unlikely to me that they're going to have Tyrod Taylor play the whole season, unless he starts out 6-2 or something like that, which I also think is unlikely because it's the Browns. It's another one of those things where it's like I just got to see it to believe it. Mitch is my favorite quote from Mitch in that whole thing about the Browns is that he says he is does not totally believe in Hugh Jackson. Which I was like,
well,
I completely agree with you. First of all,
I definitely could have used a few other adjectives, that's for sure. But we do kind of have a guy at Chat Sports, and I'm fairly confident that the Browns are going to take Josh Allen at number 1 overall.
Oh, yeah.
They like his ceiling, and I'm not a Josh Allen believer. He's like legit my QB6 if I'm going to talk about like quarterback rankings. So if they were going to take a guy like Darnold, I would say, yeah, I'd be a little bit more worried about Tyrod. However, I'm pretty confident they're going to take a guy like Josh Allen. They have not brought in guys like Saquon Barkley or Bradley Chubb even for a visit, which kind of blows my mind, which then makes me think like they're going to go early with like a guy like Minka or Denzel Ward to strengthen up that defense. But for me, I'm pretty confident they're going to go Josh Allen at number 1. But the thing – so here's like my question to you, right? So Jarvis Landry.
Yeah.
He's got 400 receptions his first 4 years in the NFL. It's the most all-time.
Record, yeah.
How many catches do you think he's going to get then? Because, like, Duke Johnson, again, was one of the top receiving backs. You have Njoku. We've seen Tyrod lean way more on a tight end than he ever has on a wide receiver. Then you have Carlos Hyde, who had 59 receptions. Let's not forget Corey Coleman, who was a first-round pick. Like, I get the love for Josh Gordon. Like, believe it or not, Josh Gordon is the 7th all-time in receiving yards per game in NFL history, which blows my mind, right?
Yeah.
Like, I get the talents there, but really, what have we really seen to get us excited since 2012? Not a lot. Like, I was freshman in college when that happened. Like, that's a long time ago to me. It's one of those things. I don't know if Landry is Landry going to get 75 catches? Like, that's a huge downfall from a guy who led the league last year with 112. I don't know if this team has the amount of I don't know if Tyrod is the kind of quarterback who can sustain all these guys. And I think from a real-life standpoint, this offense is going to move. But for both of those guys to be top 20 receivers, either Jarvis Landry is going to fall off a cliff or somebody else, like somebody's going to have to get hurt or something's going to have to happen. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I think Landry is the one that takes the big hit here. I think he's more miscast. Who knows how he's going to be? We've never seen Todd Haley have a talent like this, so I'm very intrigued to see how he's going to be used. But I do think it's going to be Landry who takes that big hit. He'll be a chain mover. He'll be kind of like an Edelman type, maybe. I think he'll still have his 75 catches, just won't be as explosive, whereas Josh Gordon's going to be streaking down the field for those 15, 16-yard chunk plays. And I think he's going to be able to get open with a lot more ease when you have a guy like Landry underneath so that you can't just put doubles on Gordon every single play. So I don't know. I am very intrigued to see Tyrod Taylor does it.
I'll say this, though. So they just paid Landry. And from a few of the guys like who I follow like really close to the Browns, a lot of them were kind of jokingly saying like, oh, Jarvis Landry, slot receiver. Like, they didn't pay him like a slot receiver. They paid him like an outside number 1 receiver. And for a guy who's giving Josh Gordon hype, like, I get it. I don't know if he's going to be that number 1 guy. I mean, you go back and look, watch Jarvis Landry. I understand it's the Pro Bowl. The Pro Bowl is a joke. But who has Landry ever had that's able to actually like stretch the ball down the field? I don't want to go with Jay Cutler. He stinks. Tannehill, I could probably throw the ball harder than what Tannehill can. And then when you go back and look when he's actually had like a guy who can stretch the field, like go look at it. Like I understand it's the Pro Bowl, but Landry's a good receiver, and I just don't know if it's one of those things like he was just really sheltered.
It's true. I think you bring up really good points because that's probably the only reason Gordon wouldn't have a blow-up is Landry ends up emerging as that number 1 guy. I guess my overall point then is I think a Browns receiver, whoever kind of emerges as that top target, we've seen Haley funnel looks to whoever that guy is. It could be Landry. It definitely could. He has the talent. Maybe he has been miscast his whole career. I could see that happening, in which case I would obviously adjust and move Gordon down. Whoever ends up being that number 1 guy, I'm going to be a huge fan of. I think Taylor will pepper him. I think they'll scheme up lots of volume for. I guess it just becomes one of those stories you have to monitor. What's guys emerging as Taylor's favorite target, things like that. I'm very intrigued to track all summer.
All right, we're going to end this question on this, Wolf, real quick. Mitch likes Josh Allen at 1. I like Sam Darnold. Who you think's going at 1?
I actually have seen the Josh Allen love happening, and I think that the whole developmental they put in Taylor for a reason, so they could take the higher upside guy that they can rest for a year. I'm going to side with Mitch on this one. I think it's going to be Allen.
All right, we'll come back to that at a later date. Question number 5: The Vikings signed Kirk Cousins to a massive 3-year, fully guaranteed $91 million deal. Ouch. Obviously, they view him as a franchise signal caller, and his numbers have not detracted from their case. How do you see his value here shaken out? What does it do for the surrounding pieces in the Vikings offense? Mitch, what do you think?
So I guess I don't want to. I think it was $84 million off the top of my head. I believe that's what it was. So, however, yeah, fully guaranteed, real life football move. It's one of those things like. I was super hyped when Kirk Cousins went to the Vikings. Not that Case Keenum's a bad quarterback by any means. He had a good year, and I think Pat Shermer deserves a lot of credit for that, but he's gone now. So I guess the Vikings have a ton of talent, okay? Like Stephon Diggs, Thielen, Rudolph, Dalvin Cook when he comes back. Sure, like the loss of McKinnon, I think, hurts their pass game a little bit, but Kirk Cousins had absolutely nothing with the Redskins.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think Kirk Cousins is going to be a guy who, again, is a little bit overdrafted because the Vikings are a real-life solid football team. That defense is legit, and I think they're going to try to not go out and just sling the ball around like he was doing in Washington. And the only thing, though, that I will say that gives me kind of excited is Kirk Cousins' ability to use his legs. So we don't really think of him as being that athletic, but he's got 13 rushing touchdowns the last 3 years. And now he's combined with an offense that I think is going to move the ball a lot. There's a part of me where it's like, okay, I can see Kirk Cousins finish as a top 5. However, with a running game like, I don't like Latavius Murray, but they have a guy like Dalvin Cook, Murray, who are going to get rushing touchdowns. And then you look at that defense, I think Kirk Cousins is going to be overdrafted because we know how talented they could be. But I think he's going to finish more like QB8, QB9 in that area, maybe throw for like 4,100 yards. The yards I don't think will be there, but the touchdown should be up. I just think he's going to be a guy who we've heard a lot about this offseason. People are going to be like, oh, okay, I've heard this name a lot this offseason. He's just going to get overdrafted.
Wolf.
And the only way I disagree with that is John DeFilippo, the new coordinator, who came in from the Eagles. His team, there's a stat. I wish I had this typed out. I don't remember the exact number. But there was something about when the Eagles were ahead by 10 or more points, they actually upped their play, their rate of play and the amount of points they scored just because they loved to like pour it on and dump it on. He comes from this kind of background, this aggressive philosophy of under Doug Peterson. At least that's what I imagine, what I hope. Obviously, there's no guarantee until we see it play out. But I'm hoping he kind of brings that aggressive tendency with him so that, yes, they do have a good defense, and that sets it up so that they really just bury teams and finish them off. That's where he liked to take a lot of aggressive deep shots. And I think Cousins now has a weapons cabinet. You mentioned the surrounding talent upgrades. We talk about that fancy stock formula. The surrounding talent upgrades to go from what he had in Washington to Diggs, Thielen, Rudolph, Cook, those guys you cited, is insane. You got a coordinator that's already talked about how he loves setting his guys up for run after the catch opportunities to then go deep after he set those plays up. I mean, Diggs and Thielen are perfectly built for that. So I think this is just an unreal merging of surrounding talent, a great coordinator, and now the quarterback to fully execute it all. And I think Cousins is going to end up throwing for 4,800 to 5,000 yards. I think he's going to absolutely explode. I think, what is he at now in my rankings, number 5 for quarterback? I think
it's disturbingly high in your rankings, yes.
He is disturbingly high, but and I know a mutual of ours, Mitch, Derek Brown, he's kind of talked to me a bunch about Cousins, and he loves him too. And I always love Derek and his opinions. I just think everything here is merging for a monster season. It makes me love everything around him too, like Diggs, Thielen, and Rudolph. I think all 3 of those guys are going to put up insane seasons. I was going to say career best. I think Thielen would have a hard time topping what he did last year, but I think we're going to see the best we've ever seen of Diggs, and even Rudolph, who's had like 10 touchdown seasons before, is going to be right up there with right under that Zach Ertz tier, kind of around Evan Ingram and them. I think he vaults up to that tier.
Yeah, so I don't mean to cut you off.
No, go.
I was on a podcast, what was it, 3 days ago, called the Fantasy Tilt Podcast with Nate and Keaton Kenley. You guys can follow those. It's a really awesome podcast. We did a great job, and they both had him inside their top 5 as well. We talked about it a little bit. I think I had him at 8, and then I think I just redid my rankings for Fantasy Pros. I think he's at my 7 now or 6. So I think he is super safe because who the hell did he have last year? Like, he had nobody. Like,
Nobody.
Jordan Reed was hurt. Like,
Chris
and
Thompson?
yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like, who did he really have? And I think he got out of a really bad situation. And I like the Vikings team as a whole. It's just he's going to be a guy to me. I don't know if he can get to that 4,800, like 4,900 yards. Like, I just don't know if they're going to throw it truly that much. Like, I think his touchdowns will be high, but the one thing that scares me with Kirk Cousins is Kirk Cousins thinks he has the arm of like a Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
He doesn't. And it's one of those things for this team to really win games, he just can't turn the ball over. And he had to be the guy in Washington that carried that team. What if they're like, hey, man, just don't make the mistakes, just be a solid quarterback. And I think like that's the way that this team's going to win because that's what helped them win in the past, and I think that's just what we're going to see.
I think they're going to be a little more aggressive than you're giving him credit for with DeFilippo coming in. I love that you brought the mobility. I didn't realize that he was as mobile as you said because DeFilippo coming with Carson Wentz really capitalized on that ability to create in the pocket and let his receivers buy extra time. I didn't realize that about Cousins, so I think it makes me even higher on him. And that Carson Wentz type of 30, 35 touchdown season is totally possible with the Vikings. I think it's huge.
All right, I'll close out on the Cousins thing by just admitting to a blind spot, a flaw in my own fantasy philosophy, which is that there's certain people, once they become associated with a certain brand long enough, I feel like it's a stain that won't go away, and I will never touch them no matter what, and that's how I feel about the Washington Redskins. So I have absolutely no interest in Kirk Cousins. I don't care if he falls to the 14th round. And I acknowledge that is not – I just have no interest. I think he's a terrible deal at $91 million or $84 million or whatever they ended up coughing.
Does that play out on the virtual gridiron? That I don't care about how much money he made. I care about how many teams.
The money thing I just brought up because you gave him $7 million more than he actually signed for in the notes. I'm just saying, like the reason I don't have any intelligent argument to make against you guys on this is because as soon as like his name got brought up, I was like, I forget. I was so happy the Broncos didn't sign Kirk Cousins. Just for that reason, no good reason. Mitch is a data guy. I got no data here. I'm not touching him.
I know Mitch. You have to run soon too. So why don't we, Nat? Can we try to like make this a rapid fire?
Sure, that's exactly where I was going with this. That's how I roll as a facilitator, Wolf. You know that. Question number 6. Outside of anyone already discussed, who do you consider?
Lay down that law.
I'm laying it down. I'm all over this. Who do you consider the biggest fantasy winner of free agency, Mitch?
Biggest fantasy free agent.
Outside of who we discussed, yeah.
Okay, outside of who we discussed, I'm gonna go with probably the guy who I said maybe like a month ago I put out a tweet like, hey, everybody needs to go buy low on a guy like Marquise Goodwin because I think Marquise Goodwin was one of those guys who was kind of undersold of how good of a year he had last year. And everyone was like, oh, they're going to take a receiver. They may go get Dez now. I've heard that rumor come out a little bit. But Marquise Goodwin last year was really, really good, actually. And it kind of gets me mad that he wasn't getting the hype. And he is an unbelievable athlete. If anybody has time, go back, watch his NFL Combine. He has the 4th fastest 40 time, a legit track speed runner, like 4.27 out of Texas. And he's always been that guy who hasn't gotten the love. So he was on the Buffalo Bills. A lot of Bills talk on this show. It's going to be a hell of a show. And he sat behind Watkins. Never really got that light. And then he comes and plays for San Francisco, and they finally give him a role where he can shine. And his last 5 games with Jimmy Garoppolo, he averaged on a 16-game basis 131 targets, 80 receptions, 1,200 yards, and only 2 touchdowns. But I'm going to sit here and I'll pound on the targets, I'll pound on the receptions, and hope that touchdown number comes up. The only 5 receivers last year in the NFL to have over 80 catches and over 1,200 yards, Adam Thielen, Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, Keenan Allen, and the other name is escaping me. So, sorry I can't give you the 5th name. Look it up. But there's a reason why Goodwin, I think, is still being undersold. I mean, I don't even know if he's in the top 36 receivers. I don't know if he's in the top 40. And for a guy who showed that much chemistry with Jimmy Garoppolo right away, and then they don't go out and sign anybody and re-sign him, he's the guy that we need to look at a little bit more because I think he is a really good talent, and that I love what the 49ers are doing. Like, if there's an organization where you need to build your a template around an organization, it's what the 49ers are doing right now.
Wolf, biggest winner in free agency.
Just to give you some data, though, Marquise Goodwin, I have him at 62 overall, and I have him 42 spots higher than the ECR right now. So, and that was like not, I like Marquise Goodwin. I don't even think I loved him, but apparently I'm 42 spots higher than the experts. So he is a screaming bargain right now. The Shanahan Target Hog X Alpha. I didn't think Goodwin could be that guy, and you just cited some serious stats that say maybe he could be. So if he is that guy going into the year, if that's his role, then that's going to be one of the best discounts in all of fantasy. My biggest winner, besides Ajayi and Mahomes, who we talked about, my biggest winner is Jay Ajayi. I think getting LeGarrette Blount out of there, I know Nat, you give me that shudder. I've talked about Ajayi a bit here. But you get LeGarrette Blount removed, and you give Ajayi now the monopoly of those early down touches, first, second, and goal line looks, in an offense that scored the most points in the league, 29 points per game, an offense that runs the most traps, where Ajayi really thrived. He ran, I think, recorded about 400 yards on traps the Eagles did with that athletic bruising line. Those are the type of run schemes that Ajayi's best at. When he has blockers in front in creative ways, has some open field to find, his open field vision is fantastic. That's why he has some of the most explosive runs in the NFL since becoming a starter. Has back-to-back 200-yard games. Not because he has great speed, but because he can just rip chunk play after chunk play. I really think we're going to see the Ajayi that we expected last year. This year, I'm not going to take him in the first round. You don't have to take him in the first round. You can get him in round 4. I think that's a screaming bargain on a guy with enormous upside as a not featured back. He's going to lose passing down work, but still, 15 to 20 touches and the most explosive offense behind the best offensive line in the game, I think is hugely valuable and hugely undersold right now.
Yeah, and Jay Ajayi has a quality that a lot of fantasy running backs don't have, which is that it's rare that you can be completely wrong on a guy 2 different times in the same season, which you managed to be on him last year. And I also got sucked into that trap. Getting it wrong 3 times in like 12 months is going to be an impressive thing.
He wasn't horrible on the Eagles.
No, you had him you moved him up to like 4 or 5 amongst running backs or something. I mean,
it was what I wanted to happen because I owned him in 3 out of 5 leagues.
I'm just saying, you can't get fooled. How many times? It's like he
was on pace.
It's like the rat experiment where they attach electricity to one of the pieces of cheese. How many times are you going to take a bite out of that one?
The only thing I want to hear your rankings though.
What's that?
No, I want to hear your rankings after the draft because I'm a firm believer they're going to take a running back in one of the top 3 rounds. I would bet money on it.
Of course, everything would be readjusted. But he was on pace for the 15th most total yards in the league once he got to the Eagles. So it was not a complete bust. And that was with Blount there, stealing plenty of looks, stealing the late, the goal line type of looks. So with him removed, I think that pace only is sustained. And, again, 15th in the league for total yardage pace. Once with the Eagles, I don't think that's a bust, Nat. I think he was doing pretty well there.
And also, I would just like to say, I didn't say it was a bust. I said that you threw him up at the top of the list. You were so all in. You were so all in. And he was not all in. And listen, I could be the greatest facilitator on the internet, but if you're going to sit here and massage Jay Ajayi's shoulders for 3 or 4 minutes rambling, I can't move on. So, question number 7. Exact opposite question. Who lost the most value during free agency? I already know what Mitch is going to say. But go ahead, Mitch. Say it again.
Yeah, we kind of already said him a little bit. I think it's Jarvis Landry, and I don't really even think it's that close. I mean, when you just talk about a guy who, I already said it, led the NFL last year in receptions, 112. He's got 400 receptions his first 4 years in the league, most of all time. The only receiver to ever have over 60 receptions with Tyrod Taylor is Sammy Watkins. I don't know. There's a part of me where I'm 75 right now is the number that I'm saying for Landry, and even that, it's hard to predict that.
Seems
there's so many mouths to feed. Well, that's what I mean. There's just so many mouths to feed, and he's still going to get pegged as that PPR monster, and I just don't know if he is anymore. So we kind of talked about it. Jarvis Landry's my biggest loser.
Well, it's got to be Derrick Henry for me. Dion Lewis, I think, a better fit for LaFleur, who loves to merge the running and receiving games like he did with the Rams, what led to Todd Gurley's huge breakout. I just think Lewis fits that scheme better. Henry goes from top 12 guy in my rankings, crashes down now because the team just seriously can never commit to him, whether it's the corpse of Murray, whether it's now Dion Lewis. They just, for whatever reasons, are reluctant to hand off the reins to Henry. Even if I love him and I think the talent's very real, the team clearly doesn't, and I think he's by far the biggest loser of free agency.
It's tough for me to argue with either of you guys on this one. I will say I think the one that is more likely to be good to live up is probably Henry, just because there's always a chance he could end up being the number one back after things shake out. But I agree.
Lewis could get hurt like he always does.
And we believe in Henry's talent. I think it's more likely that Henry ends up being a pleasant surprise than Landry lives up to the hype that a lot of people are attaching to him. But I think both your picks are extremely valid and pretty disappointing in the wake of free agency. Question number 8. What signing or departure is not getting enough fantasy football attention right now? Mitch, who is it?
Let me look at my notes.
I can tell you. And I love your answer.
So I think it's Frank Gore. And the reason why I say Frank Gore is because not that Kenyon Drake's a bad running back, and I don't want to come off and say that. However, I think Kenyon Drake a month ago was the ultimate sell high candidate. I knew the Dolphins were going to bring somebody in just because for some reason the Dolphins just don't know how to handle running backs. Like Kenyon Drake was by far the most talented running back on the team last year, and it took him until Damian Williams got hurt until he finally got the ball. Bless you. And then when Lamar Miller was the far better running back in Miami, they didn't give him the ball either. Kenyon Drake over the last 5 weeks of the last season was the number one running back in fantasy football over guys like Gurley. Sure, Gurley sat out a week, but don't tell your friends that when you try to sell high on him. But number one running back, Kenyon Drake, last 5 weeks of the season. Then this offseason comes along, and they're bringing in veterans, like a guy like DeMarco Murray they brought in. Sure, they didn't sign him, but they brought him in. And then when you bring in a guy like Frank Gore, you guys can laugh at Frank Gore. I understand he's old. I don't know if he's
laughing at Frank Gore.
We love Frank Gore.
Okay, but he has this stat blows my mind, but it's why I love like Frank Gore in a sense. He has 1,200 yards from scrimmage every single year since 2005. That's mind blowing.
Yeah.
But it's a guy who just never gets hurt. He's gonna get work. He's from Miami. Like, it's one of those things. Like, I see Kenyon Drake. People are like, "Oh, he's a winner because they signed Gore." I don't think it's true at all. Like, the Dolphins may be I don't know if they're the worst team in the NFL because the Colts without Luck are got to be up there. But right now, what the Dolphins are doing, they're just getting rid of all these pieces. And then for a running back who, to me, has never really been able to prove that he's more than a scat back, like, Drake's a little bit bigger than what I originally thought. But we're not talking about the Frank Gore signing enough and the impact of Drake.
Wolf.
Yeah, I think I'd rather than bring in Drake than Gore for Drake than a huge upside rookie that could just completely take over that backfield. I don't think Gore will take over everything, but he is just so durable, consistent. He seems like a guy that Gase could just fall in love with and decide to feed 20 times a game over Drake. Totally could see that happening. So I agree with you that Gore signing is definitely getting undersold and overlooked. What I think nobody's talking about and intrigues me the most is Doug Baldwin. He just lost all around him. Jimmy Graham, Paul Richardson, both guys had more red zone targets than Baldwin last year, especially Jimmy Graham, who led the league in red zone targets. And that just completely opened up to nobody. Who else is there? They haven't brought anybody else in. Tyler Lockett's not about to just emerge in the red zone. Baldwin's the only guy still left there that has any type of established chemistry in the scoring range with Russell Wilson. He's only 2 years removed from scoring 14 touchdowns and setting an NFL record with 8 touchdowns in like a 5-game span. It was insane what those two were doing over that 2015 stretch, which was the last time Jimmy Graham was not with the Seahawks. So I think tons of volumes opened up for Doug Baldwin, especially in the scoring area, and nobody's talking about it. And just because it's Doug Baldwin, it's not a sexy name. I think there's so much sexy upside to Doug Baldwin that nobody's recognizing. It's going to make him a great value in round 3.
Is it our buddy Derek Brown who loves Kenyon Drake?
It is, yeah, because remember he came on and you just had that stat that Drake was the number one running back from the last 5 weeks of the season. Remember, Nat, we said
right, but as Mitch said, people don't realize. Todd Gurley said, "Don't tell your friends," and Derek is our friend, so don't tell him.
Exactly, but we had literally right before that 5-week span, we had that episode with Derek where we talked about who's going to be stretch run heroes, and he said Drake's the running back. Drake's going to be that guy, and he nailed it. He nailed it down, and I love the talent I was seeing from Drake. He looked genuinely special while I was watching the tape. It's just like Mitch is saying, though. They're so lukewarm in endorsing him. They have been his entire career. Bringing in Gore only makes it seem more lukewarm. They talk about trading for C.J. Anderson. I mean, if they can't commit to him, then it doesn't matter whether I think he's talented, whether Derek likes him or not. If he can't get the volume, it's not going to matter. So, it sucks. I really think Drake could flourish if he was featured like he did during that stretch. It's just a real question mark whether he will or not.
And I wanted to weigh in on the Baldwin thing. I think the other thing that's not getting enough talk is how bad I think that Seahawks defense is going to be this
Yeah.
year. Like, they lost both their cornerbacks,
Huge
Jeremy
match,
Lane,
yeah.
and then Sherman, Cam Chancellor. I don't know what his future is. And then you look at guys like they don't have Bennett. They lost, or they're probably going to not. I don't know what they did with Cliff Averill, but that defense is just not very good. Like,
They're going to be
blank.
playing from behind quite a bit. You're right.
And they don't have a running game. At least they don't yet. They may go and draft somebody. I just think they're going to address the defense before they address the running game. And there's a reason why I believe Russell Wilson had every touchdown but one, which for the Seahawks last year. And I believe that one touchdown was a J.D. McKissick touchdown run.
I remember it.
I think that's the only touchdown he didn't account for in the Seattle Seahawks last year. So I think a lot of targets are going to be fed to Baldwin. And again, like you said, he's not a sexy name, but I mean, but prior to last year, he was a top 12 receiver back-to-back years. And I love Doug Baldwin.
I think even last year he was the wide receiver 11. It's like the wide receiver 8, 10, and 11 the last 3 years. And that's, again, without the crazy volume that he could be seeing this year. So I think it's going to be the best season we've seen out of him, and that includes a 14-touchdown season. So
Baldwin was a great example of a guy we talk about a lot, that although last year that had a bunch of dud games where he didn't do anything, and then also a bunch of big games that ended up bringing him back into like that wide receiver 11 range, something like that. Those are tough guys for me to get too excited about in fantasy. You know, the A.J. Green, Julio Jones. I mean, obviously those are maybe the next level up. But yeah, in general, I love Baldwin. I think he stands to have his standing improved a little bit. I know that you guys, I know you have to go, Mitch, and you guys know I'm a sarcastic guy. Often there's no sarcasm at all in what I'm about to say. I want to just lay that out. I love Frank Gore. Seriously. I love the guy. I say that unironically with not a hint of sarcasm. I wish him the best. I hope he runs for 1,900 yards this year, although I think that's unlikely. Mitch, great interview, man. Thanks for giving us so much time. That was a ton of fun.
No, guys, thank you. And I mean, anytime I can actually like sit down and like see people, and we had the chance to meet, which I think is like a really cool. And I think it's one of the amazing things like with this like fantasy football community that we build. And I've been telling everybody, like, if anybody's going to go to the fantasy football convention in Dallas, I live here in Dallas, Texas, and straight up, like, if anybody who listens to this podcast, watches the show, like, you have a floor to sleep on. We can go get some beers at Chat Sports. We got kegs. We'll have a good time, but come check it out. But again, guys, like, I hope I can come up to Boston soon. I think I'm going to be up there in June, so we'll definitely we'll go out for some food. I don't know if we're going to do a wing eating contest again.
I was gonna say,
That's been done. There's nothing else to prove, Mitch.
So we can definitely do we can go out for some drinks, go for some beers and stuff. But really nice, like, sitting down, haven't connected with you guys in a while, and it's amazing. And again, anytime you're in Dallas, let me know. We'll have a good time. But for everybody listening, please follow me on Twitter at MitchellRentz365. Please give Chat Sports a follow. We do a lot of content there: Twitter, Instagram. I'm the senior writer there. We do on-air hosts. I host a Oakland Raiders show called The Raiders Report, most popular Raiders show on YouTube, so I'm very proud of that. Then I'm a writer for Gridiron Experts, Fantasy Pros, and I do a lot of blind comparisons, and I have a pretty cool article coming out on Ronald Jones, so be ready for that.
Nice. Thanks a
and
bunch.
what's going to happen in the Raiders? Now you bring up the Raiders. Just one quick last question.
You can't just go in with a Raiders question. We're 58 minutes into the interview.
I know. Fine, I won't ask it. I'm just.
We'll have him on again.
I have no idea what's going to happen in that backfield. If you've been breaking down the Raiders, I need to know what's going on.
Ask him off the air.
I'll ask you off the air.
We gotta wrap it up.
Enough.
I have children screaming downstairs.
Okay.
Thanks again, Mitch. Thanks again, Wolf. This was great.
It's always great connecting and talking with you, bud.
See you guys.